Welcome to the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers, and we're joined by Mark Franco coming up in just a few moments to talk NFL. Week 11 starts tonight in Atlanta. It's the Patriots facing the Falcons. Of course, everyone knows how their last matchup went when New England was down 28-3 in the Super Bowl. Came back and beat Atlanta in overtime. One of the great comebacks ever. One of the great performances ever by Tom Brady. But problem is for the Patriots, Tom Brady's not there anymore. So it's Mac Jones running the show. We'll see if the Patriots can remain undefeated on the road. Atlanta has not won a game at home yet this season. We'll talk about that coming up and also hit on some of the NFL games for Sunday with Mark. And also we'll look at the NBA for tonight after a very busy night last night and a couple of key games that we will take a look at as well. But before we get to all of that, you know who we want to talk about? BetMGM, because they are the king of sports books. New players only. You have this deal now. Bet $10 to win $200 if your team scores a touchdown. That's right. Bet on any NFL money line, and if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. Again, new players only. Must be 21 years or older to play, and it's legal in these states: Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C. only. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. They are the king of sports books. All right, let's bring him in. Mark Franco, talk NFL. And Mark, looking forward to a new week in the NFL. I know that you had a bit of a struggle last week, but the good news is we got a fresh week here in week 11.
Yeah, having a great season, but need to definitely put last week behind us, Kev, and headed into week 11. We are now officially in the second half of the season, and a lot of playoff positions seem like they might be set, but a long way to go here. I think there's several teams that can sneak into the playoffs come the end of December, January.
Yeah, we still have a lot of season to go, and Mark's still hitting 55% in the NFL. So Mark's still having a very solid season. Let's get right to it, and Week 11 begins tonight. Patriots and the Falcons in Atlanta, and it always goes back to that old theory, Mark, that you can't be as good as you were last week. You're not as good as you were last week. You're not as bad as you were last week. The Patriots, very good last week against Cleveland. Atlanta, very bad against Dallas, and the Patriots have not lost a road game yet this season. They're on fire. Atlanta hasn't won a home game yet. So your thoughts on this? Patriots nearly a touchdown favorite against the Falcons.
I was pretty surprised last week with the effort that the Falcons brought down there in Dallas. It was just pathetic. Their offense couldn't get out of their own way. They were never in the game. They looked tempting as a nice 8.5, 9-point underdog in that spot because Atlanta was playing pretty well. But Dallas just took them to the woodshed and didn't pay much attention to the second half as that game was already decided. What I was right on the money on was the Patriots. I just thought the Patriots would dominate Cleveland. This isn't just one game an aberration for the Patriots. They played 4 solid games in a row now, and I think Belichick has the quarterback that he needed since Brady left, and Mac Jones is playing. He doesn't have to play lights out. He doesn't have to be Justin Herbert throwing for 350 yards a game, so to speak. But the Patriots defense has been bringing it. And, tonight's game, I'm a little bit surprised, Kevin, that the line is painted all over town, 6.5 everywhere. There are no 7s, but I have a feeling by game time we might see the Patriots go to -7 in a couple betting shops. I'm going to tease the Patriots tonight with a game or two on Sunday. Not a big teaser player, but I think it's worth it at this price. And Patriots basically just have to win the game tonight and keep on their 4-game winning streak and make it 5.
Primetime underdogs, Mark, since week 5 are 14-4 against the spread. Right. And that includes 2-1 Mark this past week. Dolphins beating the Ravens outright Thursday. We saw the Raiders lose to the Chiefs. And then on Monday night, the 49ers annihilating the Rams. So these primetime dogs keep cashing. You just kind of wonder when that train is going to kind of go off the rails.
Yeah, 14-4 is about as solid as it gets with any kind of trend there. But, obviously that team on Monday night or Thursday night is motivated at home. But I think that'll level off as we get even farther into the season.
Let's look at Sunday now. Colts and the Bills from Buffalo. Playoff rematch from last year. You had Phillip Rivers on Indianapolis, and he kept the Colts in that game. Rivers now coaching high school football in Alabama. It's Carson Wentz, who has done a pretty good job, Mark, with this Colts team. They were 1-4 out of the gate. They've won 4 of 5. So now Indianapolis back in the playoff conversation. Haven't beaten great competition during that time, but wins are wins. And you look at Buffalo, they bounced back from the Jacksonville loss. They beat the Jets pretty badly last week. So now Buffalo back at home. They play Thursday at New Orleans on Thanksgiving. So we'll see if there's any look ahead there. But what do you think about this matchup with the Bills and the Colts?
Well, the Bills finally came back to life offensively last week and just laid it on the Jets, but most teams lay it on the Jets, so I'm not going to give them too much stock in that. I just think this number is right where it should be. It opened 7 and 7 everywhere. I don't see it moving at all so far. The Colts were a disappointment for me last week, up 17-0 against the Jaguars. I'm laying 10, and they really couldn't do anything the rest of the game there. They were very methodical and played very, very conservative in the second half. In that one. So this is probably, I'd say no question, one of the top 3 games come Sunday to sit down and watch. No question about it. And probably some good in-game opportunities on this one, I feel.
Yeah. And we'll see what Buffalo, is made of against better competition. They played the last few weeks, the Jets, the Jags, the Dolphins, when they were struggling. So now, again, I'm not putting the Colts in the Titans class or the Chiefs class, but obviously a little bit of a step up. So speaking now of the Dolphins, Mark, and all of a sudden they've caught fire a little bit. They beat the Texans. They shut down Lamar Jackson and the Ravens last Thursday. Tua's back now. He's going to start Sunday against the Jets. They're digging up Joe Flacco to start for New York with Zach Wilson hurt. Mike White had his one game in the spotlight. He's not playing. So what do you think about this now? The Dolphins with a stretch against the Jets, the Panthers, the Giants are playing a lot of teams they could beat. Maybe they can get back in this thing, make it interesting. But what do you think about the Dolphins here laying points against the Jets?
Well, you mentioned that stellar against the spread record for home primetime games, and the Dolphins last Thursday just the week before they beat the Texans. Most teams are going to beat the Texans, but the way the Miami came out against the Ravens, especially on the defensive side of the football. They were everywhere, Kevin. They were swarming. They were getting to the ball. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens offense looked like one of the worst in the league, not one of the best in the league. And I give a lot of credit to Miami's coaching staff. They were very well prepared on a short week on Thursday night. Can they carry that momentum over against the Jets? I have to believe they could. The Jets are just so bad defensively, giving up 30 to 40 points every single week, just about. I don't think the Jets have it in them, although Miami, one of the weaker offenses in the National Football League, make no mistake about that. But I think a subpar offense over a horrible defense is worth the 3.5 in this spot. I think Miami keeps it going. Can they sneak back into the playoff race? Highly unlikely, but you never know.
Yeah, and also Brian Flores, he's had this thing over his career where the Dolphins have played better in the second half. They got off to bad starts and they played better. And again, the problem with the AFC, Mark, you have 16 teams, 12 of them are at 500 or better. There's 7 spots, and you're not one of those 12 teams right now. So You have to go on a crazy run, and they dug themselves too big of a hole. You lose the Raider game, you lose the Jacksonville game, the Atlanta game, and instead of being 3-7, maybe you're 5-5. You have some hope, but instead 3-7, they just hope to get to a little bit better towards the end of the season and make the record a little more respectable.
Yeah, they just shot themselves in the foot, no question about it. We'll see whether 2 is the answer at quarterback long-term or not. I don't believe so, but I hope he proves me wrong. He played a good game last week, but we'll see where that goes. And, you mentioned that 14-4 run with primetime games. Monday night's game, and I didn't talk about this earlier, just real quick. Giants and the Bucks. Tom Brady looked horrible last week. He had 2 picks right off the bat. Tampa's offense was stagnant, pretty much non-existent against a Redskins defense that was horrible. Giants have been playing some good ball. Do they have that many wins? Obviously not, but they've been in some tough games, and they play hard for their coach. So you got an opportunity with not a home underdog, but definitely a big dog on the road with the Giants laying around 11.
And the Giants have covered now, I think, 3 straight because they beat the Panthers, they beat the Raiders, and they lost that game to Kansas City. And last year, if you remember the Monday night game at MetLife Stadium, the Giants were right there with the Bucs too. Tampa Bay rallied late to win. And Brady has not been great against the number in prime time since going to Tampa Bay. So all of those things kind of under consideration, and the Bucs off 2 losses. So, Mark, they have to win because they're the Bucs. They have to come back and win, right? Like, that's the theory that everyone wants to throw out. But the Giants, though, they're not great, but they're gonna battle. That's the one thing you can say about them.
They come and play hard every week, unlike the Jets, for an example. We're talking about 2 bad teams. One mentality just doesn't seem in the Jets like they can bring a full effort, and the Giants, even though they do lose ball games, like you said, on a nice little cover run.
Now let's go to the Saints and the Eagles on Sunday in Philadelphia. And the Eagles, similar to the Falcons, just not a good home team. They play better on the road for some reason. And Philadelphia off a really good win at Denver this past week. Now they get New Orleans, who, again, we don't know what Alvin Kamara, what his situation is. Now you see Trevor Siemian, why he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. They were all right with Jameis. Jameis gets hurt. He's done. So now you're stuck with Siemian, who played well in the Bucs game in relief, but then they've lost now. They've kind of gone backwards a little bit, Mark, and even the Tennessee game, they dug themselves a hole. They covered late. But what do you think about this with the Eagles now back at home trying to get their first home win of the season?
Well, I have to be honest here. The one team I've been pretty much squarely on the wrong side of has been the Philadelphia Eagles. I just didn't think they were going to be a good team. Not that they are, but they're a fairly decent team, and they bring it. They play hard on the road, like you mentioned. And, I don't know if Hurts is the long-term answer there, but he's played without making huge mistakes. And that's kind of been the mojo for Philadelphia. I was very surprised that they went into Denver and totally outplayed the Broncos, who were coming off a great game the week before against the Cowboys. That's why we kind of say, don't remember what you saw last. It's a big body of work, not just what happened last week. The Saints, I mean, they're not going to be the same team without Jameis Winston. I mean, I don't see them getting the ball down the field a whole lot. But the thing that the Saints have going for them, one of the best teams in the NFL against the run. And what does Philadelphia like to do? They like to run the ball. So kind of 2 conflicting sides here. Something's got to give, and I think this is going to be an excellent game. I'm not sure if this is the CBS game of the week. I thought it was, but I could be mistaken. But should be a great game to watch with a lot of in-play opportunity. This could be a back-and-forth battle all afternoon.
Yeah, we'll see New Orleans, who is kind of on that the brink there of the wild card in the NFC. Obviously, the NFC East is kind of Dallas's division right now, so Philadelphia can only hope to be a wild card team. But you got to win some home games. That's the problem with the Eagles, that you have some decent road wins, but you got to pick up some wins at home. Although, the one thing I'll say about the Eagles, when you see some of the teams they've lost to, San Francisco early, San Francisco is better than what the record indicates, but also Kansas City, the Chargers. So there's some losses there at home where they've lost a decent competition. They haven't even played the Giants yet or Washington yet at home.
Yeah, they've lost to caliber quality playoff, hopefully playoff teams in that scenario. But like I said, this is a game that I'm one of the few this week that I'm really looking forward to sitting down and watching. Total's an interesting number too at 43 and a half. I don't see any reason why both teams can't put up points. It's just going to be a matter of, are the Eagles going to be able to run the ball with some success against that pretty stout Saints defense?
Now let's look at our final game, the Packers and the Vikings in Minnesota. And Green Bay, I say this every week, Mark, they lose that game to New Orleans week 1. You figure, okay, like this can be a long season for the Packers. That's the last time they didn't cover a game. Like, that's unbelievable. They've covered 9 in a row. They're 8-1 straight up in the stretch. And the one loss is without Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. Who knows what could have happened in that Chiefs game if he plays. But They bounced back last week with Rodgers back. They beat Seattle 17-0. And now Green Bay goes to Minnesota, a Vikings team that we know is kind of all over the place. A good win at the Chargers last week, but who knows if they could follow up with another win here. But what are your thoughts? Green Bay a short favorite at Minnesota.
Minnesota's the Jekyll and Hyde team of the NFL. They look great one week, blow leads the next. So, they are at home in this spot, but I think with the success that Aaron Rodgers has had over the Vikings, it's just been a I think he's dominated them and the Lions, obviously divisional teams, more than anybody else in the NFL. And, I'd have to lean towards the Packers, but a lot going on with some injuries here. Packers might be thin at running back. Rodgers now he's back for 1 week. I think this week he'll shake off the rest of him being a little bit rusty and potentially have a huge game for the Packers offense. And I'm going to say it's probably no shock to people that know statistics. The Packers are one of the best defenses in the NFL, and they are quietly one of the best defenses in the NFL. And when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, it's not going to make mistakes. And you have a defense the way that the Packers have been playing, a lot of young guys in the mix there on that defensive side of the ball for Green Bay. Obviously they're going to be a playoff team, but as of right now in the NFC, a lot of quality teams, but I think the Packers are ahead of everybody.
Yeah, in the last 2 visits for Green Bay to Minnesota, both wins by the Packers, both as an underdog. They won the opener there last year, 43-34, and they beat Minnesota towards the end of 2019, 23-10 as 4-point dogs. So 3 straight wins by the road team in the series. We'll see how that turns out with the Packers and the Vikings. And Mark, before I let you go, you're doing well in the NBA as we're, a month into the season, 13-5 so far, 72%. And you're going on a nice run. Anything that you want to hit on from an NBA perspective? Not necessarily for tonight's games, but just in general of what you've seen?
The NBA is a little bit more difficult to watch. To watch an NBA game from start to finish, for me anyway, not an easy chore, unlike a football game where I would watch just about any game that's on TV. But what I try to do in the beginning of the NBA season is take it slow. Be selective in your picks. Don't force anything if you don't like a game on any particular night. We got kind of a short schedule here tonight in the NBA. Looking at a couple of road favorites, but got to finish up with a little homework before I decide if I am going to even play anything in the NBA. It'll probably just be one, if not just 2 selections for this evening. But Kev, with college basketball now starting the NBA, I mean, this is the best time of year for sports.
Yeah, college basketball, now you have these tournaments starting today, and boy, it's a lot to take in when you look at the college basketball board every day.
It is. That's why we spend so much time on our computers to, research all this stuff. But, we're going to have some good holiday tournaments coming up here in Vegas, too. Looking forward to. We have so many venues now, that with the exception of Allegiant Stadium, that obviously is just for football. But and we actually get the Pro Bowl this year, Kev. The Pro Bowl will be played at Allegiant Stadium, home of the Raiders.
Big game, the Pro Bowl. Who I saw before I let you go. Oh, so you have Wichita State, Arizona, and Michigan UNLV tomorrow. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good slate. UNLV plays UCLA too coming up. I think a day or 2 after Thanksgiving, I believe. So Rebels are decent. I think they're finally going to turn a corner after having a revolving door with head coaches. Kruger is going to be, hopefully, if he's any resemblance to his dad, what a beloved man he was here. Took the Rebels to the Sweet 16 one year. The city was just mesmerized by the Rebels that year. It was an awesome time here in Vegas. But I think the young Kruger can get this team back at least going in the right direction. Are they ever going to be a Final Four team again? Highly, highly unlikely. But there's no reason they shouldn't be competing for a Mountain West championship year in and year out.
Yeah, that's going to be at T-Mobile Arena in Michigan, just coming off that loss to Seton Hall in the Gavitt games, the Big East and the Big Ten hooking up. So that's the one good thing about college basketball. You have a lot of good matchups prior to conference season with all these tournaments. So that's pretty cool. Mark Franco joining us here on the Daily Insider. You can check out his selections, senior handicapper at Vegas Insider. NFL, college, NBA, college basketball, busy time of year, like Mark said, and check out his picks now. Mark, we appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, Kev, thanks for having me on again, and we'll see you down the road, buddy. Have a good weekend.
All right, you too. Thank you. And there is Mark Franco joining us. And again, he's had a very good NFL season, very good starts to the NBA season. So check out his picks as we move ahead, and also college basketball. I mean, you look at it's daunting at times looking at that college basketball card and what we have today already. before we get to some NBA discussion. 4 games in Myrtle Beach, 4 games in Charleston, those tournaments. Davidson, New Mexico State underway. You have Penn, Utah State, Oklahoma, East Carolina, Indiana State, Old Dominion. That's in Myrtle Beach, the Myrtle Beach Invitational. Then the Charleston Classic, which starts in less than 2 hours. St. Bonaventure and Boise State, Clemson, Temple, Marquette, Ole Miss, and Elon, West Virginia. So you have all of those tournaments. And then, like I just said, in Vegas, Michigan and UNLV tomorrow, Wichita State and Arizona, the Paradise Jam in the Virgin Islands. Not a great tournament, but that's happening tomorrow. And next week, you're going to have, I think, the Battle for Atlantis is coming up as well. It's normally a good tournament. Great Alaska Shootout. Is that still going on? I know we have Alaska and the Maui Classic. So you have all of the Maui Invitational. You have all of these coming up. So we have busy Thanksgiving week of college basketball. So that's pretty cool to check all that out. All right, I want to tell you about DraftKings and the Championship Series. You could be the GOAT. You could wear that crown like the GOAT on the screen. Score your seats to the Tournament of Champions. Go to DraftKings.com for details. And the king of competition, DraftKings Championship Series, is the ultimate competition of contest winners from daily fantasy sports, sportsbook, and casino. The one and only place you can compete in the king of competitions. The best of the best in each domain will compete for series supremacy in their own domain's Tournament of Champions. They'll have one goal in mind: win the ultimate crown and earn the title of the greatest of all time. That's right, the GOAT. You could be that GOAT. Go to DraftKings.com now for more details. All right, let's take a look now at the NBA for tonight, and only a handful of games. In case you missed it last night, what were the highlights of the NBA? One of them was Portland down 20 to Chicago. They came back and beat the Bulls, so that was an impressive job there. And the Blazers have been completely on fire at home. They beat Chicago 112 to 107. Also, Dallas had a really good effort. In case you missed that late last night, they lose at Phoenix 105-98. Luka doesn't play. Suns actually, what's funny is the Mavs were up for most of that game. They led going to the fourth quarter. Phoenix outscored Dallas 37-25. They win 105-98. They close as 8-point favorites. The Suns had a shot there and almost cover. So that's kind of amazing if you had Dallas, but the Mavericks still a good job even without Luka. Jason Kidd's done a really good job this year. And I think a lot of people were on him after the Atlanta game in the opener when they just got blasted by the Hawks, thinking, oh, this guy, we've seen him at different stops. Is he the guy? But, I mean, it helps to have a guy like Luka, in your lineup, one of the top 5 players in the NBA. But the Mavs have been decent this year. And Phoenix, they've won 10 straight. So Phoenix, who was in the finals last year, blew that 2-0 lead to Milwaukee. And a little slow out of the gate, but they're on fire right now. The Bucks end up beating the Lakers 109-102. So Milwaukee, who had a strong first half, Lakers came back, made it close in the second half, and the Lakers end up covering as 9-point dogs. But that game stays under the total of 222.5. And Milwaukee with the win there, 109-102. This is such a perplexing one to me, is the Knicks. That was a back-and-forth game towards the end. The Magic pull away and beat the Knicks 104-98. Second time this season, Orlando has won as a double-digit dog at Madison Square Garden. So the road team 3-0 this season in that series. And New York, who's beaten Philadelphia a few times, they beat Chicago, but yet they've lost at home twice to Orlando. They lost at home to Cleveland. I know Cleveland's improved, but they lost at home to Toronto. They're a very, very hard team to figure out. They won at Milwaukee. They also lost at home in Milwaukee, but still with Tibbs, that Knicks team is very hard to figure out. Charlotte came back and beat Washington 97-87. So the Wizards, with Bradley Beal back in the lineup, a good spot to fade them. And Washington led early. They led it by 6 at the half, and then 30-14 in the third quarter for Charlotte. Washington went 8 of 42 from three-point range last night. That's not going to win you a lot of games in the NBA. And Detroit beat Indiana 97-89, so they bounced back from the Sacramento blowout a few nights ago. Now let's take a look at the NBA for this evening. Warriors and Cavs. Remember, they played in the finals all those years. Now, look, It's just another game in the schedule, but Golden State's 12-2. And Golden State's playing the best basketball of anybody in the league. Of course they are. They're back now after a little hiatus, and they'll get Klay Thompson back eventually. But Steph has been unbelievable, and the Warriors are 12-2. They're 9-4-1 against the spread. Cleveland coming off a loss to Brooklyn last night after Golden State beat Brooklyn, so it's kind of like a round-robin thing with these teams. But Cleveland's now lost back-to-back games. They have injuries. Evan Mobley's out. Markkanen's still out. Jared Allen, we'll see if he plays tonight. Colin Sexton's out. So this Cleveland team dealing with a lot. But they're 9-7, 10-6 against the spread. And all of a sudden now they're 0-3 against the spread after they went on a nice run. Steph Curry, I've seen different reports about him being probable, questionable. I think he's going to end up playing tonight for the Warriors. Now, the second game in the NBA, the Wizards and the Heat, they meet in Miami. The Heat were down at the half to the Pelicans last night. They come back and win. So Miami at 10-5. They've covered 11 games so far this season. They've won 3 straight. They've covered 4 in a row. 113-98 win over the Pelicans last night. Washington with no rest after losing at Charlotte. Washington on a 7-game under streak. So the Wizards, and with some low totals there too. 3 of them below 210 going under. And tonight's total at 206.5 at BetMGM. But the Wizards, we'll see what they do here against Miami. They're playing for the first time this season. Last year, the Heat took 2 of 3. But again, this Wizards team a bit different after getting rid of Russell Westbrook. And Washington's had a really good start to the season in spite of last night's loss. But also the Heat playing very well. The Heat go to Washington coming up on Saturday. So first of a home and home for these teams. The Clippers and the Grizzlies, they meet in Memphis. And this number is swung because, well, the Clippers were laying 1. I see it at some places a pick them. At BetMGM, it's at 1.5. Memphis is laying it. And the Grizzlies beat the Clippers earlier this season at Staples Center. And that was when the Clippers were struggling a bit. Clippers have played a lot better recently. 120-114 win back on October 23rd. The Clippers, though, have won 8 of 9. So they've rebounded very nicely. And LA is coming off a nice long homestand. The only game they lost was to the Bulls. They capped it off, beating the Spurs. And Memphis, who had lost 3 straight, they were not in a good place. They beat Houston by 34. I mean, Houston's the worst team in the NBA right now. But that was a good win that they needed. And now Memphis, we'll see if they can beat the Clippers for the second time. Also, what I find interesting, first time they played, 120-114 win by the Grizzlies. So 234 over 225.5. This number at 220.5. So this number has taken a bit of a dip, even though the first game went over the total. And in that game, Paul George had 41. John Morant had 28. But LA playing very well, and we'll see what Memphis does coming off that Houston win. The Spurs and the Timberwolves from Minnesota, and the T-Wolves off of a win last night over Sacramento, a game the Timberwolves led early. Sacramento came back, took the lead, and then Minnesota pulled away. So the T-Wolves now at 5-9, the Spurs at 4-10. San Antonio's played a brutal schedule. Let's just put that out there. They've lost to Dallas 3 times, the Lakers twice, the Clippers, Milwaukee, Denver. They do have 1 bad loss to Oklahoma City. They were up 14 at the end of 1. End up losing that game by 5. But for the most part, San Antonio's played a pretty brutal schedule. And Minnesota, they've covered their last 2 at home. They got Memphis on Saturday at home. But Minnesota, after that 2-1 start, they kind of fell off. But Minnesota, no rest tonight, and San Antonio rested. They need to end their losing streak. Speaking of losing streaks, the Philadelphia 76ers, my goodness. I mean, again, it just shows you how valuable Joel Embiid is. He hasn't played for a bit. He was on the COVID list. 5 straight losses now for Philadelphia. 0-5 ATS in that span. Lost a close one to Indiana to start their road trip. Then a 120-85 beatdown at the hands of the Jazz the other night as 12-point dogs. Denver had won 5 straight. They lost to Dallas back on Monday. In that game, Denver led early. Dallas rallied back for the win. The Nuggets, though, they are back to having their home court advantage. They're 7-1 at Ball Arena this year, formerly Pepsi Center, but they are 7-1. And interestingly enough, their only loss came to the Cavs. And since then, defensively, this is what they've allowed at home, Denver. So keep this in mind. 95 to Portland, 96 to Atlanta, 98 to Indiana. That was without Jokic. 96 to Miami, 94 to Houston, 75 to Dallas, 99 to Cleveland in that loss, 96 to San Antonio. So the Nuggets have not allowed more than 100 points, or at least 100 points in any home game so far this season. And tonight's total at 209. And when you look at Philadelphia, they were doing all right scoring-wise, but 85 against Utah 2 nights ago. Still, Denver defensively has been pretty strong. So the Jazz, they needed that win over Philadelphia because they had lost back-to-back games to Indiana and Miami as heavy favorites. They were heavy favorites again against Philadelphia. They covered. Utah, though, only 2-4 ATS the last 6 games. Toronto, they go out there. They continue their road trip after losing a close one to Portland. Raptors all of a sudden have lost 4 or 5. So Toronto, who has been very up and down so far in the season, the Raptors began, and again, Pascal Siakam wasn't playing. They were 1-3. But then Toronto won 5 straight. Some good wins at Washington, at New York. They've been Indiana a few times, but then they've gone backwards here, losing 5 of 6, and the only win came at Philadelphia. And we see how bad the Sixers have been. No Joel Embiid in that game. So this Raptor team, they really need a win desperately. They had a bad home loss to Detroit. They were blown out at Boston. They had a meltdown against Cleveland. I think this is when this all started. 5-game winning streak. They host Cleveland. They're up 15. Cavs come back and win. And since then, it's been a nosedive for the Raptors. So, and even defensively allowed 118, 127. I mean, 127 to Detroit. That's pretty bad. But that's what's happened with the Raptors recently. So they're going to try to at least rebound tonight as a road dog going to Utah. Now, as far as college football goes, the only game tonight, Louisville and Duke in the ACC. Good basketball game, not really a great football game, but Louisville laying 20 points on the road at Duke. And Duke's been a disaster this season. They're 3-7. But Louisville, 5-5, laying 20 points. That seems a little steep, and I'm going to stay away from that game tonight. NHL, decent card. Thursday, usually you have that. Here are the highlights. Lightning laying 125 at the Flyers. Philadelphia has gone 9 of the last 10 games scoring 2 goals or less. But they're coming off a win over Calgary. They've won some of those games, low scoring. San Jose at St. Louis. Blues laying 145. Winnipeg and Edmonton. The Jets blew out the Oilers 2 nights ago in Winnipeg. So now they're going to Edmonton. And the Oilers laying 150, 155. Carolina's at Anaheim. The Ducks are 10-4-2. What happened? This team was terrible to start the season. Now they've won 8 straight. They beat Washington in overtime. Now they get Carolina. Red Wings and Golden Knights. They play out in Vegas. And Golden Knights coming off a loss to Carolina a few nights ago. But that's the card in the NHL tonight. And a very, very busy night again in the NHL. So before we exit here today, I want to tell you again about BetMGM. They are the king of sports books. New players only. Bet $10 to win $200 if your team scores a touchdown. Must be 21 years or older to participate. Bet on any NFL money line, and if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. Legal in the following states: Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. only. That is BetMGM. Full terms and conditions apply. They are the king of sports books. Coming up tomorrow on the Daily Insider, we will talk college football with Kyle Hunter. He is the money leader at Vegas Insider, totals expert. Also, we'll talk NFL with Paul Bovey, who we had on the show a few weeks ago, and Paul has been absolutely on fire in the NFL. So we'll get his thoughts on some of the games coming up this weekend. And, of course, we'll review the Patriots-Falcons game as well, as they will meet in Atlanta coming up tonight. And we'll see if the Falcons can finally break through and win a home game, or if the Patriots will stay undefeated away from Gillette Stadium. My thanks to Mark Franco for joining us on today's edition of the Daily Insider. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll talk to you again tomorrow at noon Eastern right here on the Daily Insider. And as always, best of luck with your bets.